Before we begin, I want you to imagine standing on another world, not visiting, not exploring, living there, breathing air that didn't exist before you arrived, walking on ground that has never known life. Mars, year 2350. Humanity's greatest achievement. A dead planet, brought back to life. Or at least, that's what we believe. Because when you change a world, you don't just give it something new. Sometimes you wake something up, something that was already there, something that never needed air, never needed light, only time. Tonight's story is about the first colony on Mars, and the moment they realized they were not the first things to live beneath its surface. This is a new world. Year 2350. Mars had begun to change. Not completely. Not yet. But enough that people had stopped calling it dead. Thin bands of atmosphere clung to the surface, held in place by massive orbital stabilizers that hummed invisibly above the planet. Artificial magnetospheres shielded the land from solar radiation. Ice caps had been melted, carefully, gradually, feeding rivers that hadn't existed for millions of years. From orbit, Mars no longer looked like a grave. It looked like something in progress, like a wound, healing. Dr. Mike Varn stepped out onto the observation platform and stared across the horizon. The sky above him was no longer the deep, endless black of space. It had color now, a faint, diluted blue, thin and fragile, like it might tear open at any moment. He had spent 20 years of his life helping build that sky. And still, it didn't feel right. Ares Prime was the first true city on Mars. Not a station. Not a research outpost. A city. Domed structures stretched across the plains, connected by transparent corridors that glowed softly in the dim Martian light. Inside, there were trees. Real trees. Their leaves trembled slightly in the artificial breeze. Water moved through channels beneath the soil. Children ran through spaces that had once been sterile laboratories. Should have felt like a miracle. Instead, Mike often felt like he was standing inside something unfinished. Or worse, something that didn't want to be finished. They called it Phase 4, subsurface activation. The goal was simple. Mars needed more heat, more activities, and so they began drilling. Deep, deeper than anyone had gone before. Past the frozen layers, past ancient sediment, into the planet's memory. Massive thermal rigs were deployed across the southern basin, machines designed to inject energy directly into the crust, to wake the planet from within. Mike had argued against it. Not scientifically. The models were sound. But something about the data, it didn't feel empty. The anomaly appeared 3 weeks after drilling began. At first it was dismissed. A fluctuation, a sensor glitch, a rhythmic spike in the seismic readings. Too consistent, too intentional. Mike stared at the data for hours. The pattern repeated. Not random, not chaotic. Measured, like something responding. They heard it before they understood it. Deep beneath the surface. A low, resonant vibration. Too slow to be machinery. Too structured to be natural. It wasn't loud, but it carried. Through the ground, through the walls, through their bones. Some of the colonists said it felt like a heartbeat. Others refused to talk about it at all. Drill Site 7 was the deepest. That's where it happened. The drill didn't break. It stopped, as if it had reached something it couldn't pass through. The feed from the borehole camera flickered. Static, distortion. Then, for just a moment, something moved. Not rock, not shadow. Something vast. They sent a probe. It descended slowly, lights cutting through layers of dust and stone that had remained untouched for eons. At 3,200 meters, the probe stopped transmitting. Not abruptly, gradually, as if something was interfering, or approaching. The final frame showed a surface, not geological, smooth, curved, and pulsing. Mike didn't sleep that night. He replayed the footage over and over, enhancing, filtering, looking for anything that would make sense. It didn't, because it wasn't rock, it wasn't metal, it wasn't anything that belonged to a planet. It looked like skin. The sound changed the next day. It wasn't rhythmic anymore. It was shifting, expanding, like something adjusting to being aware. The ground trembled, subtle at first, and stronger. And somewhere deep below, something moved. The drilling station went offline. No explosion, no warning, just gone. When they reached the site, there was nothing left. No debris, no wreckage, just a perfectly circular depression in the ground. As if the planet had opened and closed again. Mike stood at the edge of the crater. The wind moved softly across the surface, carrying dust, covering what little remained. He looked down and felt something impossible. Not fear, recognition. Like standing near something ancient, something that had always been there, waiting. The seismic readings spiked again, but this time there was no pattern, no rhythm, only movement. Massive, slow, rising. The ground beneath Ares Prime began to shift, not collapsing, lifting, as if something beneath the city was turning. Mike realized the truth too late. They hadn't been drilling into Mars. They had been drilling into something buried inside it. Something that was never dead. The surface broke, not violently, slowly, like something pushing upward after a very long sleep. The ground split, and beneath it, something vast unfolded. It wasn't a creature, not in any way the human mind could define. It was too large, too old, too complete. Its surface shifted like layered continents of flesh and stone. Its movement reshaped the land itself. And when it rose, the sky darkened, not from clouds, from something eclipsing it. The ground didn't explode. It didn't rupture with violence or chaos. It opened, like something had decided, after an unfathomable amount of time, to finally move. Ares Prime trembled, not from impact, but from shift. Buildings groaned softly as their foundations adjusted to something no engineer had ever accounted for. Glass corridors vibrated with a low, steady hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Mike stood frozen on the observation platform. Below him, the surface of Mars, once dry, still predictable, was breathing. The dust didn't scatter randomly. It flowed, pulled inward, towards something that was rising beneath it. At first, it looked like terrain, a shifting ridge, a rising plateau. But the movement was too smooth, too deliberate. The ground lifted in a slow, massive arc, displacing entire sections of the colony as it rose. Steel supports bent like soft wire. Concrete structures fractured in long, quiet lines. And the surface split. And beneath it, something emerged. Not all at once. Not fully. Just enough. A vast, curved expanse of something that resembled both stone and flesh, layered in plates that shifted against one another like tectonic segments. It wasn't a single color. It couldn't be. It absorbed light in some places, reflected it in others, and in certain angles, seemed to have depth that went inward rather than outward, as if looking at it meant looking into something that had no surface at all, and it was moving. Slowly, impossibly slowly, but undeniably alive. The vibration returned, stronger now, no longer distant. It passed through the colony like a wave. People dropped to their knees, clutching their heads. Not from pain, from pressure, a sensation that something immense was pressing against their thoughts. Not communicating, not speaking, just existing in a way that human minds were not built to process. Mike felt it behind his eyes, a weight, a presence, and for a moment, he understood something he wasn't supposed to. This thing had been aware long before they arrived. Panic came too late. By the time alarms began to sound, systems were already failing. Power grids fluctuated violently. Artificial atmosphere regulators struggled to maintain pressure as fractures spread through the domes. People ran, not away from anything they could see, but away from something they could feel. The ground shifted again. A section of the city simply lowered, not collapsing, descending, as if something beneath it had opened and was pulling it down. Mike saw it when the dust cleared. Far beyond the colony, where the land had split wide enough to expose more of the thing beneath, there was a shape, circular, massive, beyond comprehension. At first, his mind rejected it, tried to interpret it as terrain, a crater, a formation, but then it moved, not outward, not upward, inward, contracting, focusing. And Mike realized it was looking. There was no way to measure it, no frame of reference large enough to make sense of what they were seeing. Parts of it extended beyond the horizon. Other sections remained buried deep beneath layers of rock that had once been considered the planet's crust. It wasn't emerging from Mars. It was Mars. Or at least, Mars had formed around it, like a shell. The terraforming process hadn't created life. It had changed conditions, temperature, pressure, energy flow, and in doing so, it had woken something that had been in a state beyond sleep, beyond dormancy, something that didn't need air, didn't need light, only time. And now, it was aware of change. Mike felt it before he understood it. A pull, not physical, something deeper, like gravity applied to thought, to identity, to existence itself. People near the fracture line stopped running, stopped screaming, simply stood still, looking toward the exposed surface, toward the thing. Then, they stepped forward. There was no violence, no tearing, no blood. The ground beneath them softened, not like liquid, not like sand, like something that accepted them. They sank slowly, calmly, as if entering something they had always belonged to. Mike watched as one of the engineers, someone he had spoken to just hours earlier, disappeared without a sound. No resistance, no fear, just acceptance. The city didn't fall. It was absorbed, piece by piece. Sections of the colony sank into the shifting surface. Structures folded inward as if gravity itself had changed direction. The sky darkened further. Not from clouds, but from the sheer scale of movement beneath it. Mike stumbled back, breath shaking, mind struggling to hold on to something solid, something human. But there was nothing left. In his final moments of clarity, Mike realized something that no human mind had ever been meant to grasp. This was not an attack, not an invasion, not even an act of destruction. It was a process.
The same way tectonic plates move, the same way stars collapse. Natural, inevitable. Humanity had not been targeted. They had been included.
Mike turned his gaze upward. The thin Martian sky, once a symbol of hope, now seemed fragile, temporary, meaningless, because below him, something far older than any sky was awake, and it was still rising from orbit. Mars no longer looked like a planet being terraformed. It looked alive, not in the way humanity had imagined, not green, not thriving, but active, changing, becoming something else, something it had always been meant to be, something that had simply been waiting for the right conditions to return. Humanity had not created a new world. They had revealed one. We thought we were explorers, builders, creators of new worlds. But some places don't need to be created. They already exist, waiting, sleeping beneath layers of time, until something changes, until something wakes them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because out there, in the dark between worlds, there are things older than planets, older than stars. And if we reach far enough, if we dig deep enough, if we change things we don't fully understand,
We won't find new worlds. We'll find old ones, and they will remember what they are. Sleep well, and maybe leave some worlds alone.